Welcome to the Two Tall Jews Show.
We are the Two Tall Jews, and we are ready to go.
And Isaac loves run-on sentences. This is a special edition of the Two Tall Jews Show where we are going to go unscripted, unedited. I'm kidding. Of course we're going to edit. What are you, insane? I figured, we do a little Isaac's on the road right now. It may seem like he's in the chat, but he's on the road. We are pre-recording. Look at us getting all prepped. And we will probably be recording with Isaac on the road. So Isaac, why don't you talk a little bit about your upcoming trip? Let the people know where you're at right now in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are you right now? Do you know where you are right now? You have no idea where you are.
Yeah. So I did a road trip to Soho, from my place in the village, and it was great. I made one pit stop into a parking garage.
Are you walking? Are you taking subways?
No.
Does anybody take the subway anymore?
The subways are getting more crowded, so there's been an increased cause for concern. But up until, this is just what I heard secondhand from my friends, the subways have been really clean. They're heavily sanitized. People are socially distancing. Most of the train cars are pretty vacant. But it's starting to pick up. So
why don't you talk a little bit about your upcoming road trip?
Yeah, at my Jewcation, as I like to say. So
we're gonna bleep that.
A buddy of mine and I are embarking on a months-long road trip of the continental U.S. beginning on So we're beginning on Monday. We're going to stop in Louisville. The route's subject to change based on COVID hotspots. Going to see a couple uncles in St. Louis. Then we're going to go to Denver, get that Rocky Mountain High.
Keep that.
That's going out. And then we're going to hit some national parks. I've never been, aside from California, I've never been to the western part of the United States. I've never been to
say it. You want to say it. You've never been west of the Mississippi.
West? No, I have been west of the Mississippi, though.
Oh. Well,
is Minnesota west of the Mississippi?
Yeah, dude. Of course it is.
Right.
No, you love saying you're the tallest Jew north of the Mason-Dixon line. So I felt like you're the kind of guy that refers to the western part of the U.S. as west of the Mississippi, like it's 1834. Got it.
Yes. And then anyway, so we're gonna hit 3 national parks in Utah: Bryce Canyon, Arches, and Zion. COVID depending, we're going to drop down, hit the Grand Canyon, drive to Vegas, hit Joshua Tree, buddy in San Diego a couple days, cousin in Pasadena, drive up the California coast, camp out at Big Sur, bang a right, go to Yellowstone, the Badlands, Mount Rushmore, loop back around. Should be a great time. We're renting a car.
Problematic.
Honestly, I just want to get out. It's not becoming real. My buddy comes in tomorrow, but it doesn't become real until we're in the rent-a-car driving away.
For those keeping record, he is going everywhere except Florida. So for the others that wanted to see, finally the two tall Jews in the same room so we could measure and people could find out how tall we are. Wow, this is going to be like – people are going to be like, what is this? Who are these guys? Well, this is who we are. All that other history, Jewish stuff, that's all facade. But I do want to actually, I don't want to get serious, but
topics of concern.
I do. Well, topics of concern. We could do topics of concern. That's a new segment. Topics of concern. Let's jump let's see what the Times of Israel's got going on.
Oh, I have an article, by the way.
You have an article, so we have a read. Go ahead.
Yeah, it came out July 2nd, yeah, it concerned the, uh, what was it called? I put it in the thing. Yes, the Day of Rage. So, like, on July 1st, there was a Day of Rage in New York City. There were factions of Black Lives Matter. I don't know who put it on. Times of Israel and Peace. Anyway, the piece centered around the elements of the protest that were essentially chanting death to Israel. So there was a Free Palestine faction, and obviously, death to Israel is not like an original idea, especially in Free Palestine circles. But I think it's an important conversation to have with regard to the elements of movements and the way in which good faith movements can get sidetracked with, these other issues that aren't really relevant to the task at hand, or at least I would argue that. Anyways, there was a lot of anti-Israel chanting. This is nothing new.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happened in Paris a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
During the Black Lives Matter protests, for some reason.
Yeah, after Ferguson. There were chants from Ferguson to Palestine.
Right. And that is also like part of a conspiracy theory that Israel is at fault for police brutality because Israel trains a lot of police departments in the US. So number one, they don't train every single police department. And number two, the ones that are being trained are probably better at resisting the like a violent act or whatever. If there's any army or entity that has been trained on how to restrain violence and how to restrain, police action, it's the Israeli police. And they're not saints. They've had their own share of police brutality incidents, but it's that same idea of like there is an evil in society and I don't know who to blame, but hey, look at this easy target that everybody seems to be on the same page about being, the evil. And in that sense, we highly recommend reading Barry Weiss's book, How to Fight Anti-Semitism, where she goes into all the different types that we are seeing in 2020, from the left, from the right, from radical Islam, and the common thread in all of them is that there is an injustice, there is an evil, there is something going on that is not okay, and people will agree. And who's at fault? Who's at fault? It's got to be the Jew. It's got to be the Jew. There are thousands of people marching in Jerusalem. So they're marching against the coronavirus shutdowns. They're marching against the corrupt Bibi government that somehow is still in power. Now we just lost all our Likud listeners. Listen, the man broke the law and he was indicted. So the fact that he won't step down shows you what sort of a power hungry man he is. And this is coming from somebody that if I was in Israel, I would probably vote for his party, but I would be on the side of people saying, let's get a different person to lead this party. The Israeli political system works in a way where it's not that you vote for an individual like we do here in the US, you vote for the party, and the party keeps putting him up because he completely controls them, and he's been there for over 10 years. No democracy is healthy.
He's the longest serving prime minister of Israel's history.
Exactly. And as much as I support a lot of the things that his party says, I'm not okay with the same person being in power for so long, man. And people are sick of it. People always say, "Oh, Bibi makes people feel safe," and he's done more for Israel's public image than any other prime minister. And it's like, yeah, also for the negative, side of things, he's done way more than other people. Like, I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is on Bibi Likud.
We heard Gil Hoffman speak 3 years ago, and I've heard him speak in Boston, and he says, "Listen, in public, Netanyahu doesn't take bribes. He keeps kosher, and he doesn't cheat on his wife. In private, it's a different story." And I think that from the chief political correspondent for the Jerusalem Post sums it up. However, back when I heard him 3 years ago, when he made a prediction, did Netanyahu get away with this or does he not? Hoffman said 50-50. Obviously, the forces of justice in Israel are sort of working in his favor, but that's for now. And yeah, I mean, have you checked polls? Like, I mean, I think still demographically, the demographic breakdown of support for Netanyahu is rather polarizing. With, I guess, with people our age, especially people in Tel Aviv, where there's a very high cost of living, you know, they can't stand Netanyahu, and where a lot of the support for Netanyahu comes from the older generation, sort of like baby boomer and up.
No, I think he has support across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not him. Like I said, it's the party. Likud has a stranglehold the same way that Labor used to have a stranglehold, and that's because of the shift in what's been happening. Yeah. I mean, as bad as one party having so much control, it's also bad when the opposition is basically non-existent. When the guy that's supposed to be running this coalition government, Benny Gantz, like, where the heck is he? What happened to Benny Gantz? I haven't seen or heard anything. I mean, this guy was supposed to be the prime minister. So, I don't know, man. It's not looking great.
And also, what did it take? It took, several months to decide the outcome of the election.
Several months, and also there was 3 elections.
Right, yeah.
So, hope for the best, I guess, and we'll just we'll keep an eye on that on a segment we like to call We're Screwed. This is a segment where this is a segment called Too Much Juice in These Mics. We're going to go through a bunch of controversial opinions. Don't cancel us. Don't get mad. Just keep listening.
How would you define Zionism, just, your sort of personal relationship with it?
I would define Zionism as the national liberation movement of the Jewish people and a modern interpretation of an ancient, not an interpretation, a modern, let me think about this for a sec. A modern incantation of an ancient Jewish position. Everything about Judaism is about Israel, is about Zion. Our holidays revolve around the calendar of that region. The Exodus of Egypt is about going to this land. And for a very long time, we were exiled and we returned, and people are upset about that. I understand. People are threatened by a strong Jew.
You think that the foundation of all present Jewish thought in all its facets stems from Zionism? I
think that it's incredibly influenced to the point where, like, you can't really separate it.
And how do you reconcile the Jews that thrived during the diaspora and its relationship to Zionism?
The word Jew was created because people are trying to like categorize how this group of people is called. These people are from Judea, so they are called Jews. So, like, you can totally live a Jewish life outside of Israel, never visit the land as many Jews did and be happy. And the Babylonian Talmud was written in Babylon, so it's not. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just it's not our. It's not ideal. The ideal situation is one where we are back there. Obviously, I'm talking about a different era where perhaps there's more peace in the world and a little something called the Messiah is around. But until then, we can do our very best to prepare for his arrival and to build up the land in a way that will be ready for a different time. Now, this goes into a deeper conversation of like what is Mashiach, what is the Messiah in terms of like Jewish belief and Jewish thought, because a lot of people will say, oh, then from that point of view, we shouldn't be there at all because we're not supposed to be there until that revelation, until that time comes, and that's true. But there's nothing wrong. That's talking about we can't bring back the temple and start doing the sacrifices again. That's what that's talking about. It's not talking. Jews have never left. The majority of Jews did, but Jews have always been there. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? How do you define Zionism and how as it relates to general Jewish belief?
I would define Zionism as the belief in the presence of a Jewish state for the Jewish people. I think that Zionism is integral to the origins of Jewish identity. I think that not to complicate things, but perhaps there's a difference between a Jewish state and a Jewish home. And, perhaps that complicates one's definition of Zionism. I don't have an answer to that and don't necessarily know if I believe there's a difference. However, what I will say is, to your point about Jews living outside of Israel and just that not being ideal, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the nature of how you said it or taking your comment out of context, but I just don't know how to reconcile that with all the Jews that happily live wherever they are by choice.
I think it's very connected to what Theodor Herzl felt when he decided that he was going to start this Zionist movement. Theodor Herzl wasn't religious at all. In fact, he was of the belief at one point that Jews needed to stop and assimilate or else. And then he realized that, so even the ones that assimilate, like Dreyfus, so even when we assimilate, you're still going to remind me that I'm Jewish and you're going to attack me for it? So I think it's very connected, and we're seeing it again. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about it on the show when we talked about anti-Semitism as it is happening in the U.S. It's what I mean by ideal is that it's the virus of anti-Semitism is going to rear its ugly head time and time again unless we have something to say about it. And the only time in history, in recent history at least, where we've said something about it and put our foot down and cultivated an area where now we just surpassed the amount of Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust, right, as a population of Israel. And this doesn't go to say that Israel is the solution to anti-Semitism as Herzl thought, because obviously the creation of Israel has led to now this new form of anti-Semitism, which is anti-Zionism. So, which by the way existed before Israel was established. The British were not fully on board with the creation of Israel when Herzl was coming to them. The Turks weren't on board with the creation of Israel. They were being anti-Zionist. They were being anti-Zionist before Zionism was fully a thing. And their anti-Zionism was because they saw what Herzl was doing as a threat. it's going to rear its ugly face again, where it's going to be like, oh my God, I need to go somewhere where this isn't going to happen. Or at least where I have a better chance of living free, secure, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, part of my issue with this idea of being ideal for all Jews to be in one place, free of anti-Semitism, amongst fellow brethren and members of the tribe, is that it plays into the hope of the Christian right. It speaks to their Zionism, or speaks to why they're so pro-Israel. And so their pro-Israel sentimentality is independent of their support for Jews, or it doesn't necessarily equate to that, in part because for them it would be ideal if all the Jews left the U.S. too and went to Israel.
Yeah. You want to get into this? Because I don't know so much about it. It seems weird. It seems like off-putting.
Right, exactly. It seems like they want to bring about the end of days, and that begins with all the Jews being in one place. That's concerning to me.
I mean, the whole theory falls apart when all those Jews say, like, we don't accept Jesus. Isn't that part of it?
Right. So, right. Exactly.
I don't see any Israelis going, you know what? This Jesus thing, you know what? Okay, fine. It sounds good. Like, I don't see any Israeli doing that.
Right. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to make a point about, I think it's worth being skeptical of who your allies are.
So, I wouldn't even give that thing time of day. You know what I mean? Like our purpose.
That's only because we know that both you and I and probably our kids and grandkids will never see a world where all Jews live in one place. So therefore, because it's not true, then we'll take your support, because you're supporting something that's never really going to come to fruition. But we'll take your support in the fight against all these other things that we welcome your support on. So yeah, I see that point.
Yeah, and then also, we hope that the support is
genuine,
deeper than just the desire for all of us to move back.
You know who Sean King is?
You mean Sean White?
No, Sean King. Oh, I see. Yeah. Nice. Right.
Yeah, what about him?
A couple weeks ago, he posted a photo. And it's now a widely circulated photo of what Jesus would look like, or what Jesus looked like then. And it's their way of saying Jesus isn't white, and then he went on some white supremacist.
He wasn't white, he was Jewish.
Right.
Yeah. He went on a white supremacist show?
No. He went on some anti-white supremacist rant. His bread and butter. But I just wanted to comment on the whole nature of Jews and race, and this idea, we've talked about this before, and we're certainly continuing to have more in-depth conversations with it again, hopefully with future guests we have on the podcast. But I feel like, recently I've just been thinking about origins of critical race theory, and this idea of, we're not Jews, we're white. When we fill out, the census, there were a lot of Jews that filled out the census and they checked off the other box. They didn't check off the Caucasian box. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I think Jews, there are white Jews, and then there are black Jews, and there are Mizrahi Jews. There are
but the idea that, yes, I'm of white skin and I benefit from white privilege and I'm Jewish, but I'm not. But it gets complicated because we're not advocating for Wilhelm Marr's notion that Jews are a race and his anti-Jewish ideology, we're a race in the sense that we're not white. We're certainly not white by default.
Right.
And many people would say we're never white. And I mean, do you consider yourself white?
No. But that's because I got a hot tan. No, I don't know. It's like, what does white even mean? What does white even mean? Seriously.
I mean, I feel like I've gotten into a lot of different arguments, especially regarding race, as of recent weeks and months, that where people accuse me of being disingenuous because I say I'm not white, I'm Jewish.
People have attacked you for saying that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, Isaac, come on. That's totally...
Yeah. I had the same. I had one girl say that to me. Wait, and so what did you say?
And I said, yeah, I'll concede the point that I benefit from white privilege. Then they cut me off immediately and they say, well, that's all that matters. I'm like, whoa. Let me get this straight. So your definition of white privilege now is extending beyond the realm of those that identify or who are white, because how do you determine someone's race? That has entirely to do with how you self-identify. Therefore, what you're talking about is privilege, not white privilege. So if you extract the element of race from the equation, now all of a sudden you're just talking about privilege, and no one would deny that more people are privileged than others.
That's it right there. Put that on a t-shirt.
So it's like, and that isn't to say that I necessarily disagree with the notion of white privilege or believe that people are coming from their beliefs are misplaced. But to jump back for a second, then I'll let you jump in. I think a lot of this has to do with labeling, and if we label someone as something, then we can get to the root of this problem easier, whatever the problem is. And saying that I'm the recipient of a society that benefits those that are white, whatever it means to be white, I just don't know where. I think there's a good faith argument to be had. I just don't know. I don't believe, to bring it back to my original point, I don't believe that me saying I'm Jewish, I don't identify as white, is a cop-out, nor do I think I'm being disingenuous.
No.
I think it's a larger point with regard to what kind of privilege are we trying to, discuss or suppress.
Right. And then we also, in our emergency episode, spoke about the different type of Jewish privilege that we've seen as Jews. And that's what I kind of mentioned, where it's like some people will take off their kippah before they go into a job interview, even though they wear it all the time.
Right.
So what kind of privilege is that?
Right. And then if you were talking to a woke leftist, the woke leftist would say, well, I wish I could take off my skin color for that interview.
Oof. What am I supposed to say to that? That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Right. Right. So, and this is the Sam Harris point, which is that if you don't want to live in a world, if the end goal, if it's one thing to disagree about how to get to that final step, but if the end goal isn't on a universal level, a broad-based universal level, to live in a post-racial society, then your allies are neo-Nazis and white supremacists who say, neither do I. Race is always a factor, and it's never...
Right, that's like the same thing where it's like affirmative action just brings back segregation.
Right.
Or not directly, but it's like it led to what happened a couple of years ago where they said in Harvard, we're going to graduate, the black students are going to graduate separately. What? Are you demanding segregation? I thought we worked our butts off. People were freaking torpedoed with water hoses, and people marched, and MLK went to jail and got killed. Freaking for this? It's all topsy-turvy, man. We're living in the Twilight Zone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Two Tall Jews Show, presented by the On This Day in Jewish History Instagram.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications if you're catching us on YouTube. And follow the main account at On This Day in Jewish History, 1H, on Instagram for daily posts and direct engagement with us.
If you're listening to us in any of the podcast apps, please hit subscribe, leave us a review, give us some stars. It means everything to us.
See you next time.